Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Odds and Ends for Monday, January 24th. Zach Ewing, Devin Jackson, and Jim Derry here with you in the Bet.NOLA.com studios, virtual studios. We have an exciting weekend of football to talk about that just finished up last night. We have a little bit of basketball. We got lots of gambling. We got all sorts of stuff for you ahead in the next hour. First, we want to mention that we are brought to you by the Caesars Sportsbook and that you can sign up for Caesars Sportsbook by going to NOLA.com/Caesars and check that offer out for Louisiana residents. For Bet.NOLA.com readers, $300 just for signing up, plus a $3,000 bonus match for your first deposit. So get that done because word is next weekend, boys, we may be talking about actually placing bets on these games at Caesars. Whereas this weekend, you had to go to the casino, or you had to go to Mississippi, or you had to, you had to work for it a little bit, or you had to find other means, shall we say. But next weekend, it may be very live and very active. So get that done. NOLA.com/Caesars. You can get that bonus, and we should be ready to go by the weekend. That is the hope. That is the expectation. So, that's about what it is. We need to get to the weekend that was, though. Jim, you're an old head. You've been around a long time. You're a football purist. Where does this weekend rank in terms of greatest NFL weekends of all time?
As far as weekends go, it's got to be number one, right? I mean, I'm never one to put number one labels on things because I am an old dude and I go back long ways, and people like to come back and say, "What about?" But I can't imagine that there was anything better than this weekend. You're talking about three games that came to a winning kick as time expired, and another one that needed 13 seconds to go, 50 yards to make a kick to go into overtime, and then winning in overtime. So I can't remember anything better than that.
I mean, it's incredible. All four games ended on the last play. All four had a field goal on the last play of regulation. Three underdogs won. You could not have gotten a parlay on some of that stuff if you had asked. We can't make the odds high enough, so we're just not going to offer. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. You had ugly games, the Bengals, Titans, and Niners, Packers, and then you had these offensive shootouts on Sunday with Rams, Bucks, and Bills, Chiefs. You had great quarterback performance. You had not so great quarterback performance. You had, it really run the gamut of everything we love about football, Devin.
Yeah, it had a little bit of everything. You had terrific quarterback play last night. Saturday, you had some great defenses on both sides in both games, making great plays. And you had a game-winning touchdown, game-winning field goals. I mean, it was about everything you could ask for in a playoff Saturday and Sunday. Just phenomenal games from start to finish. They were all compelling in some way or fashion. And it seemed like there was a team that was leading throughout, except for the Chiefs and Bills game. The other three games, it looked like there was one team leading throughout, and then the fourth quarter came and things went back and forth. So definitely a fun weekend of football.
Yeah. It was a good weekend to bet teasers, too. And although one teaser that you liked the best didn't work out because I think the Packers and the Bucks were the only teams. I guess the Bucks, it would have been a push on a teaser.
Yeah, it was not a good week for teasers for sure. But I only did that one. Look, I thought the Packers game obviously messed up a lot of things for a lot of people. And then you look at the Bengals Titans. I know several people who thought the Titans were their best pick of the week. I mean, how could you not?
I'm one of them.
How could you not like the Titans there? I mean, and going back and thinking about it, not so much the 49ers Packers, because there were plenty enough bets on the Niners there, but there was so many people on the Titans that really should have been a big red flag that the Titans, the Bengals were the pick there. So, talk about fading the public, and it doesn't always work, but when you look and hear the talk of the talking heads and everybody, Tennessee was the one where I didn't, I heard a lot of people picking San Francisco, so that doesn't necessarily surprise me. And they got really lucky to win that game, let's face it. But I think Cincinnati's the one that no one saw coming except for the Burrow and Chase fans around Southern Louisiana, and maybe the Who Days in Ohio.
The Who Dats and the Who Days.
Yeah.
I mean, when it's weird because we talk about were the Niners lucky? Yeah, I mean, based on the fact they were down 10-3 with 8 minutes to play,
they get a block
they
punt.
Lucky.
They don't get a block punt. They don't win.
But when you dominate a game on defense and special teams like they did, you're going to win a lot of the time. I mean, it's funny because they completely dominated 2 of the 3 phases. They were just very bad in the other one. So I don't know. It's a funny weekend. I mean, like I said, it had a little bit of everything. And so what we're left with is a Final Four that I don't think a lot of people could have guessed at the beginning of the year. Maybe, Rams and Chiefs, half of it you could have guessed. Bengals and 49ers, I don't think a lot of people were there. But the first game Sunday, the AFC Championship, will be Bengals in Kansas City. Right now it's a 7-point line. I saw it open some places 6.5, some places 7.5. It seems like it's sort of settled on 7, at least for now. The total of this game is on the rise. The total started open at 53, maybe even lower than that in a couple places. Now quickly went to 54, now 54.5. A lot of people see a shootout coming here.
Yeah, I'll just say that it's going to be hard for that over and under to get any higher than that. We saw last week that Chiefs and Bills were at 54, went up to 54.5, and actually came back to 54. So that to me seems like the top. So if you do like the over, I think you can even wait. I haven't done handicap yet, so I can't tell you what I'm gonna pick there. But going back to what you said about just the not being able to predict this weekend. I mean, even the Rams. I mean, you could have had, looking at some of these numbers. I went back and I'm going to do a historical post either tomorrow or the next day. But some of the odds you could have had these teams at are just insane. Just a few weeks ago, you could have had San Francisco at 200-1 to win the Super Bowl, 100-1 to win the NFC Championship, just like 8-9 weeks ago. I mean, and to think of that is crazy. Before they went on their little run, I mean, the Rams opened up the season at 13-1. They were 13-1 before Week 13. So, and that's what I have them at. But for me, it's with my future bets, it's going to be I'm going to have a hard time figuring out how I want to play these bets this week. And there are going to be a lot of people in the same boat because I may have to go against my handicap because I have 3 futures tickets. So it's A, B, K, C for me. Anybody but Kansas City, and I win good money. So it's going to be tough, but you got it. I mean, Kansas City is the clear distinctive favorite.
Yeah, they're not quite past the even mark, not quite an odds-on favorite, but plus 120, plus 130, depending on where you shop. You said you've got them at minus 180, which is crazy low to me. But
I don't have them there. That's what the price is. I can't pay that.
Yeah, I think that's a little crazy to say when you have 2 games left to play against, the Bengals the Chiefs are clearly favored in this game, but the Rams or the Niners, I think either one would give the Chiefs a pretty good game in the Super Bowl if it came to that. And that's not to say the Bengals have no chance. Funny thing about that Chiefs-Bills game was that might have been the bad beat of the weekend is if you had the under in that game, especially at 54.5. And I had the over, so I lucked out. But you had 7.5 points of cushion at the 2-minute warning, and Buffalo had a 4th and 13. So you think, okay, even if Buffalo scores, they would have to get the 2-point conversion, which they did, to get the over, and it's 4th and 13. If they don't get that, the Chiefs, the Bills had some timeouts left, but in all likelihood, the Chiefs run the clock out. And so you think you're pretty safe at that point. Now, there were some things that happened earlier that helped you out on the under, a lot of settling for field goals and missed field goals and things like that. But it was, I mean, and then it just went crazy. 25 points in the last 2 minutes, plus the 6 points in overtime. I mean, you had 31 points just in the last 2 minutes plus OT. So it was crazy, Devin.
Yeah, one of the best football games I've seen in a long time, just based on how the fourth quarter went. Because going to the fourth quarter, it was, about what you expect. I think it was like 23-14 or something like that. Bills go down and score quickly. So you're thinking, okay, it's definitely going to come down to the last drive. But, I mean, the Bills, man, they had the game won twice. I mean, how do you gather a drive in a matter of a minute and you have 13 seconds on the clock? You think you're going to win. I mean, we gotten to a point now where it's like if you leave any time on the board, it's too much time.
Well, in like 13 seconds, you're low. I'm not a big fan of squib kicks, but at 13 seconds, you're at the point where you squib it and take off even 3 seconds off in that deal. In that situation is a huge deal. 100%. It's a huge deal because then they only really have one play before they got to kick the field goal. At 13 seconds, they got 2 plays in before the field goal. And I don't know what the Bills were doing on defense either. They called a timeout before both defensive snaps and ended up with this real soft coverage on Kelsey and Hill, where it was like, hey, yeah, sure, take 20 yards. But the problem with giving them 20 yards on 2 plays is 40 yards is all they needed to get into field goal range. So I don't know what they were doing.
You have to wonder if that hurts Leslie Frazier's chances of becoming a head coach again. I mean, they played it as poorly as you could possibly play. And I know, Zach, the things we don't agree on, we like to chirp back and forth at each other. But 100%, I went back and watched the final few minutes of that game about an hour or two ago, and it amazed me that they didn't squib kick. It makes zero sense. I don't usually like the squib kick, to be honest. I'm almost always against it, to be honest. But in that situation, you got to think that a squib kick, if you instead of giving them 2 plays and a chance to kick a field goal, which is unlikely in itself, but now you only give them 1 if you do it. So it was just a silly decision not to there. It made no sense unless they run it back for 50 yards, which is unlikely. And then you're talking about then you only have 1 play period, not 1 play and a field goal. So it made zero sense right there not to squib kick it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm with you on both counts. I don't normally like it. But when you're down all the way to 13 seconds and they got no timeouts, well, they did have timeouts. But anyway,
I mean, but still,
yeah, with 13 seconds, take 3 of them off the clock on a squib kick. Even if you end up giving up an extra 5 or 10 yards, it's worth it.
You get 1 play, and then if you either have 1 play and a field goal attempt, but you got to get 30, 40 yards on 1 play. And Tyree 20 play.
I mean, depending on how that game was going, I mean, even 1 play, they still could have got it. I mean, that's just how crazy the last 2 minutes of the game were. I mean, you could have played it so many different ways, and it still could end up the same way that it did, even if they squibbed it. So
I they're going to get 1 part, maybe.
I mean, it's possible, but the point is you do everything you can to minimize their chances, right? It was almost like the Bills thought they had it won. I mean, they were celebrating on the sideline, although I will say Sean McDermott, it's not Sean McDermott, head coach. I'm totally blanking on his name now. Sean McDermott. Yeah. I'm getting confused with Sean McDermott.
Am I missing something?
No, Sean McDermott, the funny thing was, what he was like, there was a staffer who like jumped into his arms or something. And he kind of had the attitude of like, hey, game's not over. Hold on now. So it was almost like he was thinking about it like, hey, 13 seconds enough for Patrick Mahomes to do something. But then they kind of screwed the pooch on everything from that point on. I don't, and I guess we ought to talk about the overtime rules too. I know it's the hot topic today. How do y'all feel about the overtime rules? Is a change needed? I mean, on one hand, it's just freaking stop them and you don't have to worry about it. On the other hand, to see Josh Allen sitting on the sideline after he lost the coin toss and never touched the ball again, from a neutral perspective, is just not good.
Devin, I'll let you go first because I'm guessing you agree with Zach, and I probably don't. So go ahead.
I think the only change, if there's going to be a change, is just play the 15 minutes out or 10 minutes out of overtime and just play it like a regular quarter. That would be my only suggestion or change that I make to the overtime rules, because I think if you change the format, you change how they do it now, it's just going to be a situation where it's probably going to be changed again, or someone doesn't like the rules if they're changed to the old college rules. So I think if you're going to change them, I would change it to just play the entire quarter out in the playoffs. I would say the playoffs is when you can make the exception. Regular season, I think there's really, I don't think there's really much you can do there in terms of changing it. But I do think in a playoff setting, if they want to make a change, I would just play the entire quarter out instead of making it the first team that gets it scores a touchdown and wins. I think that's the only change that could be made there.
I mean, you could also say both teams get a possession, even if the first team scores a touchdown, second team gets a chance, and if they, then you can start to get into, well, one team might go for two, and you get more variations that way. So you could do that. The regular season, I mean, last night I was pretty emotional about it. I thought this is crap. They need to change this. I've kind of mellowed on it a little bit. I do think it's still sour not to see, one of the two best players on the field get another chance. Jim, what is your take?
Well, we don't disagree as much as I thought. I actually I agree with Devin. But the problem is in the playoffs that you play a full period in the playoffs, then you have to come up with something like a penalty kick type thing or something, because if it's still tied, you can't just keep playing 10 or 15-minute extra periods, right? So in the regular season, I would like to see them play a full 15 minutes and you play it out in period. It ends, or even 10 minutes. I'm fine with that. But it ends. Whatever way it ends, but play the whole period. In the playoffs, I'm not exactly sure how you do it. If you're going to keep it like this, the only thing that I would change, if I changed anything, would be that I do agree that no matter what happens, the other team should get a chance. So winning the coin toss isn't the end all be all. Like yesterday, you knew whoever won that coin toss they had about a 75% chance of winning the game because they hadn't been stopped for the last, 5 drives or whatever. So if there was anything I would change, if they're going to keep it this way, it would be to do that, to make it so both teams have a chance.
And then after that, the second time a team gets the ball, I mean, at some point there has to be a limit of, look, guys, you only get so many chances. And as I said, you could always play okay, well, if they went and got it and scored a touchdown, we went and got it and scored a touchdown, and we don't think we can stop them again. Well, go for two, and end it right there on offense if that's what you want to do. So that's that's to me, that's a good solution. I don't know if we'll actually see them change it. I mean, again, the coin flip is so important.
Also, Zach, we kind of don't. We always overreact to one game, right? If something big happens, and when it's just like the no call, when the no call happened. Next year, we were going to allow reviews for pass interference. We see how long that lasted because the officials, they weren't changing the call. I mean, even if it was, it had to be like super outrageously egregious for them to change a call, which was stupid. So they don't even change the rule. But we always the next day or the next week, we always overreact to one situation. And I'm just not an overreact kind of guy. I just don't. I like the NFL overtime rules for the most part, but I do agree with Devin. I wish, at least in the regular season, I wish they would change them to where you played the whole period.
Although, I see, and to me, that's where I actually disagree with you. The regular season, if a coin flip ends up deciding a regular season game, so you got 16 other chances. I mean, I'm sorry, but you had a chance to stop somebody, plus you got 16 other chances. If that's what happens, I also don't mind ties in the regular season. If you're tied, you're tied.
That's why I play the whole period.
So, yeah. And I mean, either way is fine. In the regular season, the idea of shortening the game for player safety's sake makes a lot more sense than in the playoffs, where it's like, yes, player safety is important, but even the players would tell you in the playoffs, let me play, let me decide this myself. So, I mean, I do agree with that. I will say this, too. Speaking of the no-call game, it isn't actually just one game. Since the NFL went to this format in overtime of if you score a touchdown, it's sudden death. If not, then the other team gets a chance. There have been 11 playoff games gone to overtime. 10 of them have been won by the team that won the coin flip. 10 of 11 now. Now, the regular season, it's only like 54%.
10 of 11 scored a touchdown, or 10 of 11 won?
10 of 11 won the game. I think it was 7 scored in a touchdown immediately, and then 3 ended up winning it. The only instance when the team that won the coin flip lost the playoff game was that NFC Championship game where the Saints won the coin toss. Drew Brees threw the interception, and then Zerline makes the long field goal for the Rams in a game that Saints fans will tell you never should have gone to overtime. So, yeah, I mean, that's...
No, everyone will tell you. Not just Saints fans. Everyone will tell you that...
No, that's right. That's right. I'm trying to not make it about that, but that's right.
I mean, it's 3 years later. It doesn't feel any better than it felt then.
Yeah. Well, let's move on.
Falcons fans laughing in there.
Devin, your handicap on this game. Joe Burrow and the Bengals beat the Chiefs. I think it was week 15 or 16 of the regular season. And they beat them pretty handily. They fell behind early and then came back and won that game. Not handedly, but they did outplay them in the second half. Can they do it again in Kansas City?
It's going to be tough. Joe Burrow has to play like Josh Allen level of like just being, and we've seen him play like that. I don't think that's going to be a question necessarily, but I think when you look at the game and you look at how badly the Bengals offensive line struggled last game, I think it's going to be an issue against the Chiefs. I mean, you got Chris Jones and the entire defensive line. Melvin Ingram is really played very well for the Chiefs. So I don't like the Bengals' chances on Sunday. I don't think it's impossible for them to win, but I think they have to play about as perfect game as you can. And I just think you have to be able to create some turnovers and just score pretty much every time you get the ball. I mean, and I just worry about the protection breaking down for Joe Burrow, and I like whenever the over and under is set, I like the over to hit in this game because I like Cincy's defense, but I don't think they have enough in their secondary to consistently stop Patrick Mahomes and their offense. And I mean, we don't know the status of Tyrann Mathieu for the Chiefs on the back end, so I think both teams are going to put up a lot of points, but I just don't like the Bengals' chances in winning the game. I just don't think they're going to be able to consistently protect Joe Burrow because they definitely didn't do it against the Titans, and the Chiefs have a pretty good defensive line as well, and they're going to bring a lot of blitzes. So I would suspect that he's going to have some issues on Sunday making plays out of the pocket.
I agree with all that, and I'm like Jim. I haven't completely decided yet, but I'm leaning Chiefs and over. That kind of seems like the square side, Jim. But
it doesn't seem like the square side. You might as well get Huey Lewis to start playing at tip to be square.
I don't know because the Bengals have become overhyped in my opinion. I thought that last week too.
I will be shocked, absolutely shocked, if 70% of the money or more is not on Kansas City because it's just what I talked about just now. Overreacting to a single week. We saw the last 2 minutes of yesterday's game, and Mahomes can't be stopped again. There's no way he's going to score on every drive. It is what it is. Everybody's going to bet the over. Everybody's going to bet Kansas City. Aunt Mabel's already planning her trip to Tahiti. I haven't done my handicap, so I can't say for sure. But I don't see how you don't take Cincinnati in the under here. I mean, and you wait because at least I think the spread's going to go to 7.5. I really do. I mean, I kind of will be surprised if it doesn't. So, and I'm going to be surprised if in the end I don't take Cincinnati here because what I saw from Joe Burrow these last few weeks, he's unflappable. I get Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, and anybody who wants to argue with me, we can have any kind of debate you want. I'll bring you on Datitude and we can talk about it. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. But that being said, Joe Burrow to me looks like little Drew Brees. I mean, he's a little bit taller than Drew Brees, but he's got the same kind of accuracy, the same mindset, the same just calmness about him, the team follows him like he's a general. I mean, he's only 24 years old. I mean, it's insane. So, I mean, I don't think you can get in these Bengals heads anymore. They prove I believe them now. I mean, you go to Tennessee, and I get Tennessee's not world beaters, but they did one heck of a job in limiting that team the way they did and just stifling Tannehill, who's no world beater. I get it, but I mean, I'm a believer.
I mean, I put it this way. I'd be more likely to be on the Bengals than I would on the under. And again, you have to check out At the Book on Thursday for our final picks. Check out Jim's column that he'll do, and we'll see. But at this point, if the Bengals are going to compete in this game, it's almost got to be a shootout, right? Like to me, here's why I feel like the over is not necessarily a square side, and it's because every time these playoff totals come in, I mean, until a couple years ago, there had never been a playoff total this high of 54. Now there's been like 5 in the last 3 years or something. This is the 6th. because the game has changed, the rules have changed, the quarterbacks have changed, and a lot of systems that sharp bettors use will just spit out numbers lower than this. And they'll see 54 and they'll say, well, my model just says it can't get that high. I'm going to bet it down. And so the books are using those same algorithms. The number comes out, and the number just comes out too low. I just like if Burrow and Mahomes get going head to head, I'm not saying the over is a lock or it's 96% to hit or whatever, but a lot would have to happen to keep that total down under 50, I would think, especially if it's a close game.
Where are the both strengths of these teams' defense? They're both on the front line, which means they're both going to get pressure on the quarterback, which is going to limit their production. They're not going to be – Mahomes is not going to be able to do what he did yesterday. I mean, he'll be able to do some things, and he'll do a lot of things well. But the Bengals rush the passer as well as a lot of teams. And you know what? Kansas City sits on defense, but one thing they are able to do is get to the quarterback. And what happened with the Bengals, they allowed 9 sacks to Tennessee, who has a good front line, but maybe not a great front line. So that's one reason that I'm probably going to lead under. I get what you're saying, but we're putting way too much on quarterbacks here. And I also, what Devin said about Tyrann Mathieu, I mean, you got to think he's probably not going to play next week. I mean, he didn't just go out. I mean, they were talking about how he didn't know what planet he was on almost. So, and if he's out, we saw what, again, Burrow's maybe not Josh Allen as far as be able to carve up things like that. And I don't think the Bengals have as many weapons, although they do have a lot of weapons. I hear what you're saying about algorithms and they spit things out too low, and I don't disagree with that. But I can tell you right now, I think most sharps are going to be pounding under here, and most Aunt Mabels and Drunk Joes are going to be pounding the over. And I don't think it's going to change much. I think it's going to be right around where it is now. And I don't think Cincinnati can win a shootout. I really don't. So I think the opposite. I think if it's a shootout, Kansas City's going to win easily.
Maybe that's why I like Kansas City in the over. We'll see.
Maybe.
Look, my thing is Cincinnati's strength of his defense the D-line? Yes. Is their D-line better than Buffalo's? Not really. Is Buffalo better in the back seven? Absolutely. And Mahomes just carved them up. I mean, that Buffalo defense was designed specifically to stop the Chiefs. And so, could the Chiefs win, if things go south for Burrow, could they win 35-13 and keep it under? Yeah, they could. But again, if you trust in Joe Burrow to score some points and to keep this thing close, I just see the over.
Well, we'll talk more about it. Kansas City only scored 26 till they started playing that soft coverage. I mean, it's like the old Jim Mora prevent defense for the old enough guys like me who remember back then. I mean, the Saints didn't give up any points till they started playing prevent defense. And the Bills gave up 26, which was actually under the KC total. And like you say, if the Bills don't get the 4th and 13, then where are we? I mean, we're not talking about shootouts and things.
I mean, that is true. I also think the defenses were just gassed at the end, plain and simple.
That's also
like I think both teams' defenses were gassed. Let's talk about the NFC game. I personally just think the AFC side is more interesting right now, but that's not to say the NFC side isn't interesting, because here you have a couple of teams that really looked good defensively. I mean, really looked good until maybe the fourth quarter for the Rams, although part of that Bucs comeback was turnover fueled. These teams, I mean, you're talking about here's a game where I do like the under, and I do think this is going to be a rock fight. Can the 49ers, what if they won, Jim? Is it 6 in a row against the Rams? Looking for 7?
6 in a row.
Yeah,
that's right.
So if the Rams are going to go to the Super Bowl in their home stadium, would be our second straight year with a team playing the Super Bowl in its home stadium, they're going to have to get through their nemesis here.
Well, there's no question about it. I mean, and can they do it? I don't know. This one's probably not going to be as much handicap, because you don't really need to handicap very much a game where they played each other twice already. And I'm going to have to go back and look. We talk about how hard it is to beat a team 3 times in a season, the old cliche. If I remember correctly, it's been done more than it's not been done. So, but again, I got to go back and look at that. But I mean, the one that comes to mind most recently obviously still hurts Saints fans, and that's last year in the Bucs. But then again, in that game, Breeze played as horribly as he could probably play. The Saints turned the ball over 4 times. If they don't do that, the Saints win, especially if Jared Cook doesn't fumble the football.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Saints had more yards in that game, had more yards per play. It was not it was not a typical game.
So, I mean, yeah, that's what it's going to come down to. I need to go through and look. I'm not sure about over/under. I'm not a big totals guy anyway. I don't play a lot of totals. But I'm almost certain that the Rams are the better team, but they keep finding ways to lose to this team that either they're out-coached, out-schemed, or whatever it is. But I'll tell you this, all those people who were talking about Matthew Stafford and all the pressure on him going in the playoffs and how they thought he was going to stink it up. Well, he's done anything but stink it up. I mean, he's been outstanding in these playoffs. And, if Cam Akers doesn't fumble the ball twice yesterday, they win in a blowout yesterday, which is what should have happened.
The snap that went past Stafford that he wasn't ready for. And it was,
should have been a blowout.
The Rams, they took their foot off the gas way too early, or it would have been a blowout. They could get whatever they wanted on offense for the first 3 quarters. And then when it came down to it, they got whatever they wanted on that last drive too. When they were trying to win, they were winning. Devin, your handicap on the NFC game.
I look at this game and I think this is the game that, this is why the Rams got Matthew Stafford. I mean, you take away Matthew Stafford, you place him with Jared Goff. They probably lose yesterday. You just think about how the game went. But I think this team, they have to win against the 49ers to just kind of get over that hump of beating, Kyle Shanahan and what they bring. And it's not like they haven't had chances to. I mean, they were up 17-3 at halftime last time these two teams played and just absolutely, just took their foot off the gas and pretty much coasted throughout the game. So when I look at this game, I think I'm actually on the opposite side of things. I think the over hits in this game. And I think it does because I think they know each other so well, they know exactly where to attack. And I think now, with the Rams being able to get their vertical passing game going back, I think they're really going to go after that 49ers secondary. And I think they're going to hit some big plays and be able to put some pressure on the backside. Because I think the 49ers, obviously the front 4 and really front 7 is really good. But I do think they have some deficiencies in the back end. And I think the way Matthew Stafford is playing, he's patient with what he's doing. I think Aaron Rodgers tried too much, especially at the end of the game against Green Bay. He tried to go for the big play instead of just taking what was there for him, because that last pass he threw in the game, they had 2 men underneath for the first down, and he could have had a chance to put together a drive and end that one. But I think Stafford is maturing every game that he's playing. He's playing at a high level, and I like the Rams in this one. I think they finally kind of get over that hump and finally put the 49ers behind them, because I think right now the 49ers, the way they're playing on offense, it's just not sustainable. Like Jimmy G has done nothing in the playoffs as of note right now.
He really hasn't. He made a couple nice throws in the fourth quarter. I mean,
ask Uncle Big Nick what he thinks about Jimmy G.
The only reason that I say that I say he made a couple nice throws in the fourth quarter is because it was almost unexpected. It was, he can throw the ball. The first 3 quarters you were like, what is this guy even doing out here? And then he did make a couple nice throws on the drive that I think they ended on a 4th and 1 and got stuffed. And then on the game-winning field goal drive, he finally got it going a little bit. But it's interesting. And we'll talk about the Saints quarterback situation here in a minute, because Jeff Duncan on the show a couple weeks ago said he thought Jimmy G could be the Saints quarterback next year. So this may be something we're talking about a lot. But in the meantime, here on Odds and Ends on bet.nola.com, just want to remind you that you can pick these games, these championship games, against the pros. In this case, it is Jeff Duncan. Go to NOLA.com/beatthepros, and you can win a weekend stay for 2 to Harrah's New Orleans if you can beat Jeff Duncan in this contest. He's picking every NFL playoff game through the Super Bowl, so you've got to do the same. And then over the course of all 6 contests throughout the year, if you're playing, keep playing, because the grand prize, a trip for 2 to Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. So NOLA.com/beatthepros. And here is Uncle Big Nick on Jimmy G. They win in spite of Jimmy GQ. In his defense, they dropped the good balls he threw. Yeah, they did drop. I remember that. So, Saints fans, maybe we better wish against that. In all seriousness, the big news of the day on the Saints side of things is that this Gail Benson interview that came out over the weekend, she says, I have no idea if Sean Payton's coming back. None of us know. Sean does what he does. I'm paraphrasing here, but she basically was laughing about it and saying, we don't know what Sean's going to do. Sean's going to do what he wants to do. Jim, you and I were talking about it pre-show. I don't think, and you don't think there's any chance he leaves for another team, especially not at this stage. There is a chance he says, I'm tired, all these injuries, all this COVID problem, I'm sick of it. I want to take a week off and go work for a TV station, and then I'll come back. And whether he comes back to the Saints or not, who knows? But I think that's at least a legit possibility. Yeah, he probably wouldn't come back to the Saints at that
point. I think this is all some kind of smoke screen. I'm not sure who he's telling what to. First of all, if Jay Glazer isn't breaking Sean Payton news, I don't believe it, because they're like joined at the hip. So the fact that Ian Rappaport is saying this stuff, he's getting it probably from someone inside the Saints organization that's just throwing this out there. It's not coming from Sean Payton. So
Glazer did have an interview, by the way, not with Payton, but on, I don't remember what radio station, but I saw the tweet. And he's echoed sort of what we were saying, is that Payton's not leaving for another team. Could he take a break? Yes, that could happen. So there's at least a possibility.
I will say this. I would doubt seriously that Sean Payton would leave this team hanging in the lurch. So he either does it very, very soon or he doesn't do it at all. He's not going to he's not going to do what Drew Brees did and wait till March or whatever it was to make his decision. He's going to come out and say within the next week or so, because, I mean, honestly, if the Saints need to look for another coach, I mean, likely the next person in line would be Dennis Allen, who's about to go and talk to the Bears for their open position. So he's not going to leave the Saints hanging. Again, I think if he doesn't do it by maybe early week after next, so the next 10 days, he's staying.
Yeah, I agree. If something happens, it'll happen fast. Cowboys suck, says Tyreek took 100 years off my life. You got to explain that. Was that a bet, or was that are you rooting for the Chiefs, or what? What was the deal? Give us a follow-up on that, because 100 years is a long time. Switching topics just for a minute, I do want to talk a little bit of basketball before we go. LSU lost on Saturday to Tennessee. They are in a little bit of a tailspin. I think if you look at KenPom, the efficiency website, they got the number one defense in the country, and on offense they're like number 132 or something. I mean, they go into some drafts that are ugly. Oh, I got Super Bowl odds to talk about too. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll end the show with some Super Bowl odds. But while we're at it, I mean, LSU a couple weeks ago looked like, hey, this team's got something, and they play good enough defense to compete with anybody. And I suppose that's technically true. I just don't see them winning 6 meaningful games in a row in March unless something changes on the offensive end.
Couple things. First off, Will Wade's tirades have obviously ticked off the officials so bad, because they have any call that's even kind of close, they've got no calls the past couple. I'm not blaming that. I'm not saying that's the reason why they lost, but the officiating the past couple games has been obscenely bad.
The Alabama game I thought was terrible. The Tennessee game, they were going to lose anyway, but the Alabama game I thought was real bad.
I'm not blaming it on the officials so much, but they've been I don't know if they have had two crews who hate Will Wade or whatever, but that leads me to my next point. I think Wade has done an awful job the past couple of weeks. I really do. You can't go off on and I'm as high strung, and when I was coaching back in the day, I've got my share of texts, Lord knows. But you cannot, when you're coaching a college basketball team, you have to be in control. Your players feed off of what you do. And you're not going to get any more calls by acting like a moron. And so, I mean, maybe the refs, it's not he's not Coach K. If Coach K had the once a year time that he gets mad and refs, whoa, Coach K's getting mad at me. It doesn't work that way for somebody like Will Wade. You can't just go off on a tirade and say the things that you can read his lips that he was saying and just get away with it. I mean, officials are going to hold that against you, and they're going to hold it against your team. And again, your team starts if you start saying we're getting hosed, then your players are like, yeah, we're getting hosed. I mean, and he didn't do, first of all, and another thing, he didn't do anything against Tennessee to quell the beefs that the two teams were having against one another. He was almost like adding gasoline to the fire. I mean, you got to get in there and calm your teams down and get your team out of that mess. He's more worried about yelling at a ref at halftime, and he's got his players like going against Tennessee players. You can't do that.
Yeah, he's kind of persona non grata in college basketball circles anyway. And once you start getting a reputation as a complainer, that makes it pretty difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know. The point is they're not making enough shots, and it's weird because Will Wade.
Terrible.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at not just his LSU teams that have all been good on offense, and if they've had deficiencies, it's been on defense. His VCU teams were like that too. He's a very good offensive coach, always has been. Recruits offensive talent, is able to coach it up. This year, he's proven that he can coach a good defense up, but it's like he doesn't have anybody who can make a shot. So it's just bizarre. They miss Xavier Pinson for sure. Now,
without a doubt.
I don't know that he's going to make a huge difference, but you're talking about a team that was in a conversation for a number 1 seed just a couple of weeks ago and is now probably more in the 4 or 5 range and slipping from there. So they've got to pull out of it, and maybe Xavier Pinson helps them do that. The news of the day in college basketball, by the way, is you're watching Odds and Ends here on bet.nola.com. The Auburn Tigers go to number 1 in the AP poll for the first time in school history this morning. Now, as you look at this, you still have Gonzaga, Duke, Baylor, and Purdue ahead of them in the odds. They're 12-1 to win the title. Auburn's got a legitimately good team. I mean, I think they're number 5 in Ken Pom. This is not like a flash in the pan that's won some lucky games. I mean, this is a good team. And I don't know. I don't know how much y'all have watched them play, but we're not talking about a team that is at a talent deficiency, Devin.
Yeah, they're a really talented team. Got a chance to watch them again over the weekend against Kentucky, and they led pretty much wire to wire in that game. I know early on Kentucky, took the lead, and I think they had a few injuries early on in that game that ended up, kind of coming back to bite them. But I mean, Auburn is playing some of the best basketball right now. I'm kind of surprised about their odds. It seems a little low for a team that's now the number 1 team in the country and playing about as good as anyone in the country, plus the talent they have. Now, obviously, Gonzaga, has had a great team year in, year out. Duke is kind of back at the top now. Baylor, I worry a little bit about them because the Big 12 is wide open right now. There's a lot of good teams in the Big 12. So I kind of worry about them as the season goes on. They take some losses here and there. They might not be as highly ranked in a few weeks from now. So I think Auburn right now, you look at the board, that's pretty good value for them, 12-1 odds, and they're only going to continue to play better over the course of the season. Because they're still gelling and still figuring each other out. But the way they're playing right now, I mean, it's not that it's unsustainable. Obviously, they're going to hit a slump here or there during the season, but the way they play offensively and transition is about as good a team in college basketball as there is.
I will say this, though. Go ahead, Jim.
I'll say that if you look at this list, I think you have to think Auburn has a better than 50-50 chance of getting a number 1 seed, right? And if you're going to say that, even if it's close, I mean, 12-1 is insanely too low or too high, I guess.
You're going to get a good path as a
huge value on them. So, I mean, again, I just looking at who they've beaten already, what their schedule is going forward. They could probably lose 2 SEC games, and which I don't necessarily think they're going to do. If they lose 1 SEC game and make it to the semifinals of the tournament, they're a 1 seed. Or if they lose 2 SEC games and win the championship of the SEC, they're going to be a 1 seed. Any of those things. So
it depends on what everybody else does too. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean,
but if you're looking at this list, if you're looking at this list, the 4 1 seeds are going to come from this list. I mean, almost certainly. So where do you rank them or chances? Gonzaga and Duke are almost certainly going to be 1 seeds. Baylor, Purdue, Auburn, and Kansas are going to be fighting it out for the other 2. Excuse me. So
if you look at Auburn's schedule,
50-50.
Yeah, look at their schedule. Their remaining road games, because home games. I mean, look, they're going to be a huge favorite in any home game the rest of the way. Doesn't mean they'll win them all, but they'll be huge favorites. Their remaining road games tomorrow at Mizzou, they'll be a huge favorite in that game. At Georgia, they'll be a huge favorite in that game. At Arkansas could be tricky. At Florida could be tricky. At Mississippi State could be tricky, and then they're at Tennessee. So, they have a couple. But again, I don't know that I see more than 2 losses in there. It's maybe 3. But depending on what other teams do, you still might be talking about a 1 seed. To Devin's point, I will say about Baylor, if I like Baylor, I would root for them to lose a couple because they're talented enough to where if they go from 10-1, they lose a couple, and you can get them at 12-1. Maybe they're a 2 seed if they lose a couple. That's a 2 seed that could easily win it all. And so in college basketball, losing a couple games, maybe you miss out on the Big 12 title. That's not going to really change my viewpoint for them to win the national title a whole lot. Maybe being a 1 seed versus a 2 seed, you get a slightly tougher path, but I still think there could be value there too.
Well, all that being said, I as good as the odds are on Auburn, I don't really think anybody's going to beat Gonzaga or Duke. And more specifically, I think Gonzaga is a over. I feel about how I feel about Gonzaga is kind of how I felt about Georgia in October.
I felt that way about Gonzaga last year too.
Yeah,
and I do think they're the best team. But college basketball, man, it's just
it's tough. It's different
because
it is.
It's hard. The other team I will say to keep an eye out for on this list, and Pac-12 hadn't been real good recently in any sport. Arizona's got a damn good basketball team. They are really, really good. And I think there's value on them at 18-1. So they're Ken Pom number 2. They're number 8 on offense, number 9 on defense, which usually champions are balanced like that. I really like Arizona. And at 18-1, again, I think those are odds that are just going down. So speaking of basketball, in the pro game tonight, the Pelicans have had a rarity actually in the NBA. 3 days off. They didn't play since they won at the Knicks on Thursday. They're at home tonight against Indiana, and I think this has actually moved up to 3.5 since this morning. But the Pels, keep grinding, and we'll see what they can do if they can get into that play-in game, I guess.
Go ahead,
Devin, you're going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to add, they look really impressive on Thursday night against the Knicks. And obviously they're still building towards a play-in spot. We'll see if they can continue it. But saw the big news today drop about Jackson Hayes. So that'll be something to monitor going forward for the team.
Yeah, Jackson Hayes charged after that incident. Was that in L.A.?
I think so.
Yeah, an incident with police officers in July. Yeah, it's 12 misdemeanor charges in connection with altercation of police with Los Angeles last year. So misdemeanor charge, I don't know, 12 is a lot, but they're all misdemeanors. So maybe he wasn't playing very much anyway. So as far as the effect on the court.
Actually, he has been playing a decent amount.
Has he been playing more? I guess
he's been playing a lot more lately.
Guilty of not watching deep enough into games. But
he hasn't been playing well, but he's been playing a lot more.
And Valley Sports New Orleans, by the way, is not available in like 90% of if you don't have cable, you don't get it. So that's the other tough part about that. Anyway, it is football season until the Super Bowl is over, and so we still have football to talk about. Let's show some Super Bowl odds, and we'll wrap up here. Jim, I know you were bemoaning this earlier. The book that you use has the Chiefs at -180, which is incredibly priced up.
Yeah, and it really, it makes it hard on someone that's trying to protect his other futures with the hedge, right? I mean, at +130, I can bet, X amount on the Chiefs and make sure that I win something no matter what happens. Some people don't like the hedge. I mean, some people just say, let it ride and all the hedging is dumb and all this stuff. Well, I'm not that way because I'm not greedy. When it comes to betting, my goal is to win more than I lose. It's always been that way.
Good goal.
I do this really for fun more than anything. I mean, sure, I want to win money like the next guy, but so yeah, -180 is unplayable. I mean, and I don't see anyone that would play that at -180. So the Caesars Sportsbook app can't open soon enough for me. But as far as odds go, if you're looking for value, even though I do like the Rams this weekend, I think the best value on this list has got to be the 49ers at 4.5-1 because they certainly aren't more than, what are their odds this weekend going? I haven't looked at the money line yet, but it's got to be 180-ish, plus 180-ish or something like that. So you're getting really good value there. I mean, sure, if you want to take a flyer still on the Bengals, I mean, I got them at 100 to 1 in October, and you could have got them at 200 to 1 before week 3, which is still insane. 25 to 1 before the final week of the regular season to win the Super Bowl. That's insane that it's that high. So, I mean, it's kind of hard, and you look at the exact odds that we talk about. I almost prefer to just take something along those lines. Maybe I'll be better off picking that. But
yeah,
I don't know if the Bengals can win or not, but 7.5 to 1 worth of flyer. The 49ers is still my best bargain.
You're talking about just the regular odds, the 49ers, plus 450.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you look at this, and you'd have to sit and do the math, but Chiefs at plus 130, if you took them both at plus 240 over the Rams exacta and plus 450 over the Niners exacta, the math might work out better in your favor that way. I would have to, if you do think the Chiefs will end up as champions, I would have to sit and do the math, but it'd be pretty close.
I don't
Devin,
think
your
I
thoughts
have this
on
my list yet.
What the exact odds? Yeah, that would be curious to see if it was priced similarly. Devin, looking at these exact odds, any values for you here?
A lot of odds there. I mean, realistically, I think probably the one that definitely, I don't want to say definitely could happen, but there's a small possibility. I do think the 49ers over the Chiefs plus 600 is one that could be intriguing because, the 49ers have the defense to match, kind of what, Kansas City likes to do. They're familiar with this team, played them a couple years ago in the Super Bowl.
They had the lead on them after 3 quarters.
Yeah, I mean they had pretty much everything going for them. They just need to close the game. So they have the cool, they'll match up everywhere, especially in the secondary. But if you look at someone to defend Kelsey, I mean, you got Fred Warner. So they have the defensive line built to really put pressure on Patrick Mahomes and make life difficult. But I just think the more realistic one could be those top 2 ones, obviously. But I think the Chiefs over the 49ers over the Chiefs is a long shot that could happen. But I could see it happening in a game where the 49ers play up to their potential and the offense actually gets going and scores points. So I think that's the one to watch.
Yeah, no, I like that take because matchup-wise, it does kind of seem – now, the issue is the 49ers got to get by the Rams again first. Nice little boost. I mean, if you look at Rams plus 210, you could boost them up to plus 300 if you think they end up winning this thing. If you do think the Chiefs will be the AFC rep. But it's interesting to kind of play with these things, especially in a hedging perspective. Anyway, that's what we got for today. We do encourage you again to download that Caesars Sportsbook app. Go to NOLA.com/Caesars. You see it there in the green box. It's worth $300 right off the bat. It could be worth up to $3,300 if you put in enough money, you play your cards right, you win some bets, you could make a lot more than that. So it is worth it. It is coming. NOLA.com/Caesars. And before we leave you, by the way, on Thursday at the book at 4 o'clock, we'll have best bets for you. We'll take a closer look at these conference championship games, of course. And maybe we'll actually have some good news on baseball. I know we talked about that some last week. They supposedly met for 2.5 hours today, the Major League Baseball and the Union. So maybe there'll be some good news. I'm hopeful for that. But in the meantime, this is Odds and Ends, and we will close with some final thoughts. First from you, Devin Jackson.
I mean, playoff football is still king. There's just nothing I don't think that can top. I mean, besides March Madness, I think the NFL playoffs, just the way they are now, they set it up perfectly every year, where the 2 best games are usually on Sundays, and they end in pretty thrilling fashion. So I just think we're in store for another great day of football this upcoming Sunday, and looking forward to seeing hopefully some new blood in the Super Bowl. Could be a long shot for the Bengals to win, but I think it would be a great story if the Bengals found a way to win in Kansas City on Sunday.
Jim Derry.
My closing thought is a stat for you, Zach Ewing and Devin Jackson. Teams in the playoffs that have won this season so far have gone for it on fourth down exactly 4 times. Teams that haven't won in the playoffs this postseason have gone for it 24 times. 6-1, boys and girls. 6-1.
That is about the most misleading stat I think that you've ever come up with, and that's saying something for you. Because you're counting this. You're talking about the Steelers who got bombed by 21 points.
Okay,
you're
well,
talking about the Eagles who got bombed by 20 points.
The Steelers only went for it twice.
What about the Bucs yesterday?
The Bucs yesterday went for it 4 times and got it twice. Okay,
what about the Bills yesterday?
Okay, take those out. The Bills lost.
Now, the Bills, by the way, had they not gone for it on fourth down so many times, would not have even been close. They
had to go for it for sure.
They converted 2 fourth downs on their first drive, one from their own territory, which is the
That
Jim
was
Derry.
stupid, by the way.
It wasn't stupid. It worked. If they don't do that, they don't even get to overtime.
Stupid. If I rob a bank and don't get caught, doesn't mean it's A, smart, or B, a good thing to do.
Well, just because you punt on 4th and 1 and you get a stop doesn't make that smart either. Huh? Just saying. And this is absolutely true. You always hear about the decision. Oh, they went for it on 4th down. What an idiot. I can't believe they would risk that. You don't hear about it when the Bills convert 2 fourth downs and get an opening touchdown in a playoff game. Huge plays.
24-4.
You don't hear about it when that happens, but you hear about it when the Titans go for it and pass up a field goal. Their kicker,
you can have your opinions
all year long.
I haven't stated a single opinion except for the Bills' first fourth down, which was dumb.
Yeah,
Other than that, I'm just stating a fact. A fact is the teams that won in the playoffs have gone for it 4 total times in 6 games. The teams that have lost have gone for it 24 times. That's my closing thought of the day.
Teams that are ahead don't need to go for it on 4th down. Simple.
Not 6-1.
Well,
it's not a 6-1 margin.
Take the stats out from the fourth quarter of those games and see what we got. Make you do a little more research, and we'll talk about it.
No problem. That's easy to do.
All right. The Bills lose that game by 10 points if they don't go for it on 4th down in the first quarter.
You're extrapolating something that happens in the first quarter that would never change the course of the game, right?
7 points wouldn't change the course of that game?
It would never change the course of a game. Sure, you can subtract points from anything, but you think that game is going to play out exactly the same way? Like it'll be the same exact plays and everything if they don't go for it on 4th down, right?
I'll leave you with a Jim Mora thought. You play to win the game.
No, that's Herm.
Punts don't win. That's Herm. I'm sorry. What am I saying? That's Herm. You don't punt to win the game. You don't punt.
I don't think Herm was talking about going for it on 4th down.
That's playing to win, man. That's playing to win. I'll leave you with this. The NFL, it's similar to Devin's thought. It's the greatest theater in the world, point blank. Here we are 24 hours later, still talking about it, still arguing about it, and we will all week. And people will love it, and they'll tune in next week. And this weekend was the greatest show of the greatest theater in the world. And so put a little money on it next time, NOLA.com/Caesars. Hopefully by next weekend, we'll be there. We'll have more for you on that on Thursday on At the Book at 4 p.m. right here on these same channels. Jim will have Datitude up this week as well. So tune in for that and keep it locked to bet.NOLA.com. For Devin and Jim, I'm Zach. We'll see everybody.